Should I lead or
Yeah,
okay.
you lead.
Compelled by great compassion, you taught the sacred Dharma to dispel all wrong views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Do not commit any unwholesome actions. Engage in perfect wholesome actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Om Saji Bhagi Chukshing Me Do Tram Ri Rab Ling Chi Ni De Gyen Pa Di Sangye Shing Du Mik Te Po Wa Yi Tru Kyun Nam Dak Shing La Chö Bar Shup. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all transmigratory beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to abide in equanimity, free from attachment to friends and anger towards enemies. May they abide in equanimity. I myself will cause them to abide in equanimity. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they have happiness and its causes. I myself will cause them to have these. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and its causes. I myself will cause them to be free from these. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to be never separated from the happiness which is totally beyond suffering. May they be never separated from this. I myself will cause them to be never separated from this. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this.
Yeah, so then if you like, you can visualize Shakyamuni Buddha as a field of refuge, and other figures of the field of refuge in the space in front of you, at the height of your forehead, at a comfortable distance. And, yeah, and then generate the mind of refuge in the Buddha and Dharma Sangha. So oneself wishing to be protected from the sufferings of samsara and protected from the suffering of this life, suffering of rebirth in the lower realms and future lives. And then also wishing to protect all other sentient beings from every form of suffering. And recognizing the ability of the Buddha and Dharma and Sangha to protect us from suffering, primarily by teaching the Dharma and showing us how to practice and how to use our lives in a beneficial way. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my two collections of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my two collections of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. From my two collections from explaining the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit transmigratory beings. Okay. So, like I said, we have about 3 hours. So we'll divide our time into into different segments. So we'll do some meditation, and then take a short break, and then do a bit more meditation, and take a bit longer break. Like that, kind of alternating. Each meditation session will be somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. Um, yeah. So let's start by generating a positive motivation. So we can, following the words of the prayer of the four immeasurable thoughts, thinking, may, may I have an attitude of equanimity towards all sentient beings. So for this, actually, for the motivation in general, and for most of the meditations we'll do, then it's very helpful because we're thinking a lot about our connection with other human beings, with animals, with other hell beings, hungry ghosts, gods and demigods, all other kinds of sentient beings that exist. So it's very helpful to visualize them all seated around us. Mm. So usually we visualize, first of all the class of friends, those who we naturally have affection for in this life. And we usually begin with our mother and father. So we can imagine our mother of this life seated at our immediate left. And then all of our female friends and family seated to our left and behind us. Remember our, experiences we've had together with them in this life, and remember our connection with them and our affection, caring about them. And then remember our father of this life, and I can imagine him or a male or a main male caregiver, whoever that might have been, seated at our immediate right. And then all of our male friends and family, imagine seated to our right and behind us. So they, uh, the men and women, males and females, who are close to, imagine to our left and right, and filling in the space behind us, representing that they support us. We kind of fall back or rely upon them. And then especially we remember the group of people or individuals or, that we know or are quite distant from us, who we tend to have antagonistic feelings for. We tend to dislike, um, yeah, and try to avoid. So we imagine them seated directly in front of us, facing towards us, as a way of remembering that we need to make special effort to practice um, abandoning afflictive emotions and generating positive attitudes towards them. And then we imagine all the other sentient beings, all the other human beings, animals, and beings of the other realms. Imagine them all in human form, seated around us as vast as space. And the reason we imagine them in human form is because it's primarily human beings that have the ability to practice on the spiritual path. The gods and demigods don't have any interest in spiritual practice because they're so comfortable. Their lives are so full of pleasure. And then animals, hell beings, hungry ghosts, they really don't have the capacity to practice Dharma because their lives in general are so full of suffering, or they have so many obscurations in the mind that it's difficult or impossible to practice Dharma. So we visualize all these beings in human form, as well as all the other human beings, actually, in order to kind of create a cause um, for them to take rebirth with an opportunity to be able to practice Dharma. So imagine all these countless other sentient beings who we're, interconnected with, have different relationships with from life to life, surrounding us, filling all of space. And especially remember how they're all the same as us and fundamentally wishing to have well-being and happiness and wishing to be free from harm and from suffering and misfortune. Mhm. And try to generate an attitude in your heart of caring for all of them. And especially generating love, love for all sentient beings, wishing for all of them to have well-being and happiness. Mm. And compassion for oneself and for all sentient beings, friends, antagonists, strangers, wishing for each and every one of them without excluding one to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And then, think, for this reason, that I'll engage in this session this afternoon of meditation on mind training and all the different aspects of this mind training practice, the 7-point mind training, in order to free myself and countless other sentient beings from suffering and the causes of suffering, and to develop for myself and then for countless other sentient beings every form of temporal and ultimate well-being and happiness up to full enlightenment. And for this purpose, especially I myself must become enlightened. Without myself becoming enlightened, then I don't have the wisdom and the insight, the skills and ability to free others from suffering, to know how to help others, know how to free others from suffering, and know how to establish them in the perfect happiness of full enlightenment. So therefore, I myself must quickly become enlightened, and therefore I'll engage in this practice of the mind training. Mhm. Okay. So, I'll show you the text. You can see? Yes, you can see. So we'll read through the text line by line and just meditate on each few lines. Mm. So it begins, yeah, homage to great compassion, the essence of this nectar of secret instruction is transmitted from the master from Sumatra. I think I'll read through the whole text once first, just to kind of spark our memory. what it says, and then we'll come back and meditate from the beginning. You should understand the significance of this instruction as like a diamond, the sun, and a medicinal tree. This time of the 5 generations will then be transformed into the pathway to the fully awakened state. And then the first point is explaining the preliminaries as a basis for practice. First, train in the preliminaries, and then there's the actual practice, training the awakening mind, which has 2 parts, how to train in the ultimate awakening mind and how to train in the conventional awakening mind. So yeah, Pamuk Rinpoche flips them around. Actually, I think we'll meditate on the ultimate awakening mind first, but we'll come back to that. So then he puts B the first, training in the conventional awakening mind. Banish the one to blame for everything. Meditate on the great kindness of all beings. Practice a combination of giving and taking. Giving and taking should be practiced alternately, and you should begin by taking from yourself. These 2 should be made to ride on the breath. Concerning the 3 objects, 3 poisons, and 3 virtues, the instruction to be followed, in short, is to be mindful of the practice in general by taking these words to heart in all activities, and then training the ultimate awakening mind. When stability has been attained, impart the secret teaching. Consider all phenomena as like dreams. Examine the nature of unborn awareness. The remedy itself is released in its own place. Place the essence of the path on the nature of the basis of all. In the period between sessions, be a creator of illusions. And then 3, transforming adverse circumstances into the path. This is really the essence of the entire practice. When the environment and its inhabitants overflow with unwholesomeness, transform adverse circumstances into the path. Apply meditation immediately at every opportunity. The supreme method is accompanied by the 4 practices. And then integrated practice of a single lifetime. So this is the 4th of the 7 points, the integrated practice of a single lifetime. In brief, the essence of the instruction is to train in the 5 powers. The 5 powers themselves are the great vehicles, precept on the transference of consciousness. Cultivate these paths of practice. And then the measure of having trained the mind. Integrate all the teachings into one thought. Primary importance should be given to the 2 witnesses. Constantly cultivate only a peaceful mind or a joyful mind. The measure of a trained mind is that it has turned away. There are 5 great marks of a trained mind. The trained mind retains control even when distracted. And then the commitments of mind training. Don't go against the mind training you promise to observe. Don't be reckless in your practice. Don't be partial. Always train in the 3 general points. Transform your attitude, but maintain your natural behavior. Don't speak of others' incomplete qualities. Don't concern yourself with others' business. Train to counter whichever disturbing emotion is greatest. Give up every hope of reward. Avoid poisonous food. Don't maintain misplaced loyalty. Don't make sarcastic remarks. Don't lie in ambush. Don't strike at the vital point. Don't burden an ox with the load of a zo. Don't abuse the practice. Don't sprint to win the race. Don't turn gods into devils. Don't seek others' misery as a means to happiness. And then the 7 precepts of mind training. Every yoga should be performed as one. All errors are to be amended by one means. There are 2 activities at the beginning and end. Whichever occurs, be patient with both. Guard both at the cost of your life. Train in the 3 difficulties. Seek for the 3 principal causes. Don't let 3 factors weaken. Never be parted from the 3 possessions. Train consistently without partiality. Value and encompassing and far-reaching practice. Train consistently to deal with difficult situations. Don't rely on other conditions. Engage in the principal practices right now. Don't apply a wrong understanding. Don't be sporadic. Practice unflinchingly. Release investigation and analysis. Don't be boastful. Don't be short-tempered. Don't make a short-lived attempt. Don't expect gratitude. And then he concludes with a dedication. My manifold aspirations have given rise. Yeah, actually, there's this other, I like this other translation better. This verse, I'll read that one. Because of my numerous aspirations, I have defiled the tragic tale of suffering. I have defied the tragic tale of suffering, and I've taken instructions to subdue self-grasping. Now, even if death comes, I have no regrets. So, yeah, as you'll remember, I mean, you can clearly see like this, the way this is composed is not meant to just be understood like on its own. There's so many lists of different things and so many kind of cryptic lines that it's really meant to be understood on the basis of reading commentaries on it. No, and then as you read different commentaries again and again, and then meditate, then these lines are really just meant to spur your memory, to remind you of what you've come to understand about the practice. Yeah. So since we've gone through the explanation of all the lines, I'll remind you of especially all the things I highlighted, all the lists of 3 of this and 4 of that and 5 of that. I'll remind you as we go. Yeah, okay. So homage to great compassion, the essence of the secret instruction as transmitted from the master of Sumatra. So yeah, let's first just meditate on compassion again for a few minutes. This is probably not part of the root verse, of the root lines actually. But remembering, remembering the benefits of the attitude of compassion. So that, especially remembering that here, explain this, the verse of the homage to compassion by Chandakirti, where he uses as an analogy the seeds of crops, the water that nourishes a crop, and then the harvest, that's the fruit of the crop. So, excuse me, he says how compassion is like the seed of enlightenment. So at the beginning, compassion is important because it is like in our mind, it plants the seeds for becoming enlightened by seeing, the suffering we experience and wishing to be free from that. And then on that basis, recognizing, the suffering that others experience and being able to more vividly, imagine and recognize what it must be like for them. And then wishing to free them from suffering. And that mind, really, that compassion that's extended to others, seeing the suffering of countless other sentient beings, and recognizing that, to be them, for them to be themselves is no different for us to be ourselves. And then wishing to be able to do something to free others from suffering is really the seed of our own enlightenment, because it's that, having that sense of the suffering of others and feeling it as if it's our own that compels us then to initially, generate the wish to become enlightened, eliminate all of our own limitations and faults, and perfect all of our potential and our positive qualities in order to be of greater benefit to others. So we can, yeah, for a couple minutes, reflect on that. This attitude of compassion for ourselves gives rise to compassion for others. And then that is like the seed of our own enlightenment. Mhm. And then how Chandakirti says compassion is like the water that nourishes the crops as they grow. So as we're practicing the path, so in the middle, as we're practicing the path to enlightenment, then it's again and again seeing the suffering of others and wishing to be able to do something to help them, to free them from suffering. Then that gives us energy and inspiration and compels us to carry on despite the hardships of practicing a spiritual path. Again and again, from life to life, over many lives, it's compassion that um, fuels our practice. So we can reflect on that. How is that so? Is that the case or not? Mm. And then Chandrakirti says compassion is like the harvest at the end of the practice. So it means the end of the practice of the Bodhisattva path is the state of full enlightenment. So what is it, what is the harvest of full enlightenment? It's all the infinite enlightened activities that a Buddha engages in, appearing in different forms and teaching to benefit sentient beings. We can think of, all the activities of Shakyamuni Buddha or His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Think of His Holiness flying to countless countries, attending countless conferences, teaching at countless venues, and giving public talks and Dharma teachings again and again. So what is it that compels, His Holiness or other teachers to, to work so tirelessly to benefit others? It's compassion. So compassion is like the harvest at the end of the growing season. Mm. So yeah, so why is there this homage at compassion to compassion at the beginning of the mind training practice? Because this is really, it's like the essence of this method of transforming um, problems into the path, transforming difficulties, suffering into the path of spiritual practice is compassion. So when we encounter problems ourselves, we should have compassion for ourselves, but also, remember, let that be a reminder to us of the suffering that others experience. And thereby, when we encounter difficulties and challenges, then we transform that into, instead of just fretting about our own plight, then we can transform that into increasing our caring and concern for others, and thereby transform it into something that's beneficial for us and beneficial to others. And so why is this? How can we transform problems we encounter into a spiritual, into progress on the spiritual path? By approaching them with compassion. So we can ask ourselves, does that make sense to me in my own experience? Can I see how, when I encounter difficult people or misfortune in my own life, tragedy and sickness and loss, can I see how using compassion, understanding my own suffering, can help me more understand um, and be aware of the suffering of others, and then help increase my compassion for others, and thereby compel me to continue developing as a better person on the spiritual path. Mm. Okay, so relax your attention there. We'll take a short break, just 2 or 3 minutes. For those here in the room, it's better we stay in silence, no, for the short breaks. Otherwise, it becomes a big distraction. We all start chatting. Okay, so we continue. Mm. So generate the mind of compassion again. Yeah, again, also remember yourself surrounded by countless sentient beings, beginning with your mother and father of this life, and then friends, family, antagonists, enemies, and strangers all around. And then again, try to generate compassion, extending from your heart equally to all of them. And then we continue with the verses here. says, you should understand the significance of this instruction as like a diamond, the sun, and a medicinal tree. This time of the 5 generations will then be transformed into the path to the fully awakened state. Mm. So it's kind of summarizing the essence of the instruction. He's saying you should understand the significance of this instruction. So, and using these 3 analogies, the diamond, the sun, and a medicinal tree. So a diamond, in that, even a small, portion of a diamond is something extremely precious, so that whoever possesses it, it clears away the suffering of poverty. And here it means like the poverty of the suffering of samsara. And so a diamond is like representative of the attitude of compassion or bodhicitta, the mind, the attitude wishing to achieve full enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. So try to imagine or consider, how is that attitude of bodhicitta or the attitude of great compassion in some of the ways I just described also is like a diamond, and that is extremely precious. And then also the analogy of the sun. It's like a sun in that, when the sun in the morning, when it rises in the east, it clears away all the darkness of the night and all the fear that goes, and difficulty that goes with darkness. Especially imagine, these days there's kind of light all the time because of electric street lights. But imagine in the distant past, like when this was composed before electricity, the night would be, a time when you're susceptible to being attacked by bandits or, um, you know, enemies or by predators. So the sun would be, really a welcome thing in the morning. And also, it was in a cold place. It's cold, right? The sun rises and clears away the suffering of cold. So, like that, this mind of compassion or a mind of bodhicitta is like a sun clearing away the darkness and the suffering of samsara. And then it's like a medicinal tree, like a mythical medicinal tree. Its leaves, every part of it, the roots, the bark, the trunk, the branches, the leaves, the fruit, the flowers, every part of it has different medicinal properties to relieve and cure different illnesses. And so, like that, every aspect of the attitude of great compassion and the attitude of bodhicitta has the power to relieve the sufferings of our body and mind in different ways. So by practicing these, compassion and bodhicitta, then this time of the 5 generations will be transformed. So this time in general when there's more sickness, more afflictive emotions, more wrong views, more quarreling and strife among beings, and you know the nutrients in the environment of the air and water and earth are declining, and so forth. So in short, all the different problems that we face, then with these attitudes will be transformed into the path to the fully awakened state, into the path to enlightenment. Yeah, so for a few minutes, you can reflect on those, how these minds of great compassion and bodhicitta are like a diamond, like the sun, like a medicinal tree, and how they transform all the difficulties we face in the current times into the path to enlightenment. Mm. And we can continue to the first point, explaining the preliminaries, the basis for practice. First, train in the preliminaries. Yeah, that we don't really need to meditate on. Just like the things we already did, generate the mind, some mental focus, mind of refuge. And then it's also a positive motivation, like meditate on the four immeasurable thoughts, which we did a bit. And then also engage in basically the seven limb prayer, which we didn't do, but we've already probably done this morning. But engage in practice is to accumulate merit and purify obscurations. So then is the actual practice, training the awakening mind. And there's two, training the conventional awakening mind and the ultimate awakening mind. Yeah, we'll just go in the order it's out here, I think. So first is training in bodhicitta, and especially the method to generate bodhicitta, the method of equalizing and exchanging self and others, which has 5 steps. No, I don't, the first step isn't mentioned here explicitly, but we'll go ahead and meditate on it first. And then the second step, recognizing the faults of self-cherishing, is explicitly mentioned. And then the fourth step, the benefits of cherishing others. Yeah, then the fourth step, actually exchanging self and others, is not explicitly mentioned. We'll meditate on it briefly. And then the fifth step, practicing giving and taking, or Tonglen. That's what's mainly talked about here. So first, already visualizing oneself surrounded by all sentient beings, as I described before. Then we just briefly meditate on equanimity. So the idea here is that, we want to generate an equal sense of concern for others. But typically, we care more about some and less about others. And so our concern for others is lopsided and biased. It's not even. So in order to reduce that kind of unevenness in our concern for others, then why don't we have to reduce our kind of biased concern for those we're naturally close to in this life, our mother and father and family and friends. And so one way to do that is to recognize how that although we have this connection with them in this life, that we'll be parted from them eventually. Eventually, they'll die and pass away. We ourselves will die and pass away. So we shouldn't. And then in the future lives, we won't recognize each other again. We won't have this connection again. So we shouldn't place too much expectation on having lasting happiness, independence upon them. Right. So the idea is to kind of not care about them. We can still care about them, but to reduce our kind of attachment and this unrealistic expectation that only independence upon these people that I'm close to in this life will I have any happiness. Yeah, so briefly recognizing how we'll be parted from our friends and family. Mm. And then another way to contemplate to reduce attachment for friends and family is to reflect how, even in this life, and then definitely in future lives, then these relationships can change such that we become strangers. Those who were close to at one point, later we become strangers. And then, yeah, and definitely in future lives, just as strangers become dear friends or enemies. So likewise is the case, not only with those who are friends and family in this life, but also those who are antagonists or strangers in this life. Like they all three change places in one life. You know, enemies can become strangers or friends. Friends can be strangers or enemies. Strangers can become friends and enemies. Even in one life, they change places. And then, of course, you know, if we think in past, over the course of past and future lives, you know, all sentient beings have equally been at times friends, strangers, and at other times enemies. So why should I treat some differently than others? Makes much more sense to have an equal sense of concern for all sentient beings, for each and every sentient being. Especially irregardless of how they treat me. And then the next, we have to keep each of the contemplations quite short because we have a lot of different things to go through now. So yeah, forgive my interrupting your train of thought again and again, but yeah, that's just kind of how it's going to be today. So then the next step is reflecting on the faults of self-cherishing, or the faults of the selfish, self-centered attitude. And it's expressed by the line here, banish the one to blame for everything, right? Banish the one to blame for everything. So here, in the context of the mind training practice, the one to blame for everything is this selfish, self-centered attitude. So here, it's very important to distinguish between a wholesome and beneficial sense of concern for oneself versus a destructive sense of concern or attention to oneself. And the main way, you know, the main way to distinguish is that a wholesome sense of concern for oneself thinks about not just one's short-term pleasure, but one's long-term benefit, meaning not only in this life, but also in future lives, thereby becomes Dharma. And then also, it's a sense of concern for oneself with an understanding of, you know, afflictive emotions and the antidotes to those, and also with the understanding of one's interdependence with others. The recognition that, you know, because our lives are interconnected with the lives of countless others, then actually by doing things that benefit us, by the way, indirectly it benefits others. By doing things that benefit others, indirectly it benefits us. So within that kind of understanding of interdependence, then it's much easier to have a wholesome sense of concern for oneself. And but here it's when it says banish the one to blame for everything. It's talking about this destructive or kind of malignant sense of concern for ourselves, where we see ourselves as standing isolated and alone, disconnected from others, and we feel like we're in competition with others. such that if others benefit, then we lose. And if we benefit, then others lose. And so we have this concern exclusively for our own welfare in a way that causes us to have more disregard for others. So that's really, and what it's saying is don't banish the one to blame for everything, is that all of our afflictive emotions and then all the negative karma we create, the non-virtuous actions we engage in that are a result of afflictive emotions in our minds. And then all of the suffering experiences we have from life to life that are a result of that karma. They all arise from this kind of malignant, sort of selfish concern. So we have to check, is that the case? That all the suffering I experience in this life, in past lives, and future lives is a result of my own karma, my negative karma that I've created. That negative karma has arisen from afflictive emotions like anger and jealousy, hatred, contempt, greed, and arrogant pride, and so forth. And that all those afflictive emotions have fundamentally arisen from this totally self-centered, the selfish concern for what I want and what I like without considering the welfare of others. So we have to check, how do we stand with that? What's our understanding of that? And then, based on that, see the faults, all the faults that arise from this kind of selfish, self-centered concern. So we can look in our own experience of being selfish and also in the experience of being around, being with others who are totally self-centered and selfish, and look at all the faults. And then generate the wish to banish this attitude. Mm. And then the next is meditate on the great kindness of all beings. Mm. Yeah, so this is quite straightforward. So we think of, not only think of the kindness of others, but here you can do in your own way. I won't really describe how. You can, think of it in all different ways. But also, I mean, in addition, because what it's also alluding to here is this, the third step in the method of equalizing and exchanging self and others, thinking of the benefit of cherishing others. So the point here of thinking of the kindness of others is to generate an attitude that cares about others, cherishes others. So here again, remember, the first step, equanimity, that yes, it's easy to think about people who've been kind to us in this life, but we should use that as a basis to extrapolate that, like that in other lives, in countless other lives, people who are maybe strangers are strangers to me or even enemies to me in this life, they've also similarly been kind to me. And so, we don't have much time now, but try to expand the mind out as vast as possible. Of course, you have to start in a way that's very tangible with one or two people, but then extrapolate and expand this attitude of caring, remembering the kindness of others who've been directly kind to us or indirectly, like people who build the roads, the buildings, provide us with food, and so forth, and their parents, their families, and the animals. So think of the great kindness of others in countless different ways. And then as you do that, generate a mind, cherishing others, appreciating, valuing, and caring about others, wishing to accomplish, out of gratitude, wishing to repay the kindness of others. So meditate like that for a few minutes. Meditate on the great kindness of all beings. So you can conclude your meditation there, and we'll take a 10-minute break now. Mm. So we meditated on these two lines. So in this method of generating bodhicitta, which is the main basis for actually all the mind training teachings, those are the two methods for generating bodhicitta: the sevenfold cause and effect method, where the first step, the primary step, is to reflect how all sentient beings have been one's kind mother, and generate gratitude and the wish to repay their kindness and so forth in that way. And then here, the method of equalizing and exchanging self and others, where the main thing is to reflect on the drawbacks of a selfish attitude, or self-cherishing, and the benefits of cherishing others. So that's what these two lines express: banish the one to blame for all, meditate on the great kindness of all beings. And then the fourth step is to, recognizing the drawbacks, the harm that arises to ourself and others through the selfish attitude, and the benefit that arises through, a loving kindness and compassion that are extended to all sentient beings. Then we decide to and try to exchange self and others. Right? It basically means exchange the degree of concern we have for ourselves. Whereas, like ordinarily, if we have 90% concern for ourselves and only 10% concern for others, we try to exchange that for the degree, for a selfish person, the degree of concern they have for themselves, they place that on others. So 90% of our concern, or more, 99% of our concern, we direct towards others. And then the degree of concern we ordinarily place on others, we place for ourselves. So we exchange this degree of concern. So we try to generate an attitude caring for others as if they were us, in short. So try to meditate on that for a couple minutes, actually exchanging self and others. Again, visualizing oneself surrounded by all sentient beings. And exchanging the degree of concern. Of course, one of the paradoxes here is that the more we are concerned about the welfare of others, then, by the way, our own aims are accomplished as well. So it's not like we're somehow harming ourselves. So exchanging self and others. Mm. So this attitude is reflected in the second of the 8-verse mind training, the second verse. Some of you might have read, because one of the required readings for this module was I think it was His Holiness commentary on the 8-verse mind training, which we didn't get to in class, but the second verse says, wherever I go, whoever I'm with, May I see myself as lower than others. It means may I see myself as less important than others. Shenla Samba, and then from the depths of my heart, seeing others as supreme, may I cherish them. So that expresses this attitude now of exchanging self and others. The degree of concern I ordinarily have for myself, may I put upon others and cherish others as I do myself. And then the degree of disregard I ordinarily have for others, may I put that upon myself and not be so concerned about my own likes and dislikes and wants and needs. And then we go to the actual exchanging, the giving and taking, where we basically it's meditation on, again, compassion, but a kind of a radical form of compassion and loving kindness. So the essence of this, I'll read the verse first. Practice a combination of giving and taking. Giving and taking should be practiced alternately, and you should begin by taking from yourself. These two should be made to ride upon the breath. So this we meditated on, very clearly a couple times during the teaching sessions. So again, the way we set up the visualization, it's based on recognizing all the faults of the selfish, a small, childish, kind of petty, selfish attitude. Then recognize our own selfishness, or as a black ball at our heart, very dense, kind of hard ball, or whatever way we want to represent it, it's fine. But it's kind of clenching at the heart, grasping, clinging on to one's own, concern, one's exclusively, one's own likes and dislikes, wants and needs, and so forth. This exclusive concern with oneself alone at the expense of any awareness of others. So this selfish attitude, imagine, is this dark black ball at one's heart. And recognizing recognizing the faults of that. And then a mind of compassion for others. Visualizing all sentient beings around us, recognizing how, each of them suffer and struggle in different ways, are beset by different, misfortunes, tragedies, and misery and pain. Then wishing, so this is the radical form of compassion, is, thinking, remembering their kindness, and then wishing, may all of their suffering ripen upon me. In order to repay their kindness, may I myself take upon the suffering of others. So here again, as we did before, it's best to start. It says actually start with yourself. So first, you think of your future self, because we've all acquired countless causes for suffering in the future. The seeds of those are in our heart now, in our mind now. So, so we can first wish, all the causes of suffering that I've created for myself, may that become a cause to banish the one to blame for all, to eliminate my own selfish concern, the source of all of that suffering. And then as you inhale, imagine drawing all your own suffering and causes of suffering into your heart. It becomes powerful laser beams or lightning bolts and diminishes and gradually destroys this self-centered attitude on one's heart. And then once we feel we've become free from suffering, then we extend that same attitude towards others, remembering the kindness of others. So start with one person and increase. We don't have much time now, but as much as you can. And then think, may all their suffering ripen upon me. And each time you inhale, imagine drawing their suffering out of them, like in the form of like black smoke or soot or oil or something, or whatever, any form you want to visualize. It flows out of them, and draw it into your own heart, and then place it on, put it on your own selfish mind. And then again, as it encounters that mind, it transforms the suffering of others. So the others become gradually more and more free from suffering. And then as you put it on your own selfish mind, it transforms into, again, a powerful laser beams or lightning bolts and gradually diminishes and destroys your own selfish attitude. So why don't we meditate on that for a couple minutes first? So this is essentially meditation on compassion for ourselves, compassion for others. Mhm. And then, so that's practicing taking. And it says, and you should begin with by taking from yourself. And then practice giving. So just before that, it says giving and taking should be practiced alternately. So then we practice giving for a bit. So here, the practice of fundamentally love, wishing well-being for ourselves, wishing well-being for others. So again, we can begin with ourselves. So here we imagine giving away all of our possessions, our body, different parts of our body, and even our roots of virtue. So with regard to ourselves, we can imagine, sending all those things out in whatever form is most beneficial for our future selves, later in this life or future lives. And imagine giving all that we possess now to our future self in whatever form would be most beneficial. And then once we have some sense of that, then some genuine experience of that form of caring and wishing for the well-being and happiness of ourselves, then we can extend to others. And so the visualization to others is as we each time we exhale. So each time we breathe out, then imagine sending out our possessions, our body, and even our roots of virtue, all the positive, our virtuous karma and positive merit we've collected. Imagine it flows out from our heart in the form of like white or golden light rays, or liquid light rays, wavy, and then flows out to others and transforms into whatever is most beneficial for them. And then they experience joy in receiving that. So like that, meditate on giving for a couple of minutes. Mm. And then finally it says, these two should be made to ride on the breath. So finally we can combine these two. So try to combine them such that with each inhalation, as you exhale, you practice giving. And as you inhale, you practice taking. So again, as you exhale, with each exhalation, imagine giving away one's possessions, one's body, and even one's roots of virtue to others in whatever form is most beneficial. And imagine they progressively enjoy more and more well-being and happiness. And with each inhalation, each time you breathe in, imagine taking on the suffering of others. and putting it on your self-centered attitude. And gradually that diminishes more and more, and others become progressively more and more free from suffering and the causes of suffering. So for a few minutes, practice like that, practicing Tonglen or giving and taking. So then again, we'll take a short break, just a couple minutes, relax the tension. So we continue with the next verse, which says, concerning the three objects, three poisons, and three virtues, the instruction to be followed in short is to be mindful of the practice in general by taking these words to heart in all activities. So remember, the three objects are the three objects of our mind, of our five sense consciousness, or our mental consciousness. So when we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch something, or think of something with our mind, so the three objects are those that give rise to pleasure, those that give rise to displeasure, and those that are neutral. So things we see as attractive, things we see as unattractive, and things we see as neutral, neither attractive or unattractive. So those are the three objects. They give rise to the three poisons. And that things we see as attractive or give rise to pleasure, then they cause us to develop. This is the three root poisons, or the three root afflictions, cause us to develop attachment. Things we see as unpleasant or appear to us as unattractive give rise to anger or aversion. And things we see as neutral, then they give rise to ignorance, grasping at them as existing from their own side. So concerning the three objects, the three poisons, and then so we transform these three poisons into the three virtues. Where in relation to, so when we see attachment arising, then we generate the antidote to attachment, this contentment. Thinking the not grasping at things, but kind of leaving things be. Thinking if I have it, it's okay. If I don't have it, it's okay. Sort of not, the mind not grasping, but rather being content instead. Content without needing more things. And then the antidote to anger is loving kindness. So when we see things that appear to us as attractive, we generate contentment. We can enjoy it, but not having need for it. And then when we see things as unattractive, we generate compassion and loving kindness. May it be well. If it's a person or a thing, may it be free from suffering. So loving kindness and compassion instead of anger. And then when things appear as neutral, in place of wisdom, in place of ignorance, we generate the antidote to ignorance, wisdom. So when it says here, the three objects, the three poisons, the three virtues are the three antidotes to the three poisons. So antidotes to attachment, antidotes to anger, and antidotes to ignorance. And then it continues, the instruction to be followed, in short, is to be mindful of the practice in general. It means this practice in general, by taking these words to heart in all activities. So we can meditate thinking of different activities that we engage in our daily life, in which we encounter the three types of objects. They give rise to the three poisons: irritation and anger, attachment and craving, and ignorance. And then imagining how can we use those experiences to give rise to the antidotes to those: non-attachment and contentment as an antidote to attachment, loving kindness and compassion. We can also add patience as antidotes to anger, and wisdom, realizing dependent arising, and selflessness as an antidote to ignorance. So in whatever way makes sense to you, is useful for you, then reflect on that, the meaning of that verse for a few minutes. Mm. Then the next is to meditate on the training in the ultimate awakening mind, means emptiness. Yeah, so we'll read this lines and then meditate on it briefly. When stability has been attained, impart the secret teaching. Consider all phenomena as like dreams. Examine the nature of unborn awareness. Mm. So, yeah, the remedy itself is released in its own place. The essence of the path. Place the essence of the path on the nature of the basis of all. And then in the period between sessions, be a creator of illusions. So it means, yeah, when stability has been attained, I suppose, in practice of compassion, impart the secret teaching, being the teaching on emptiness. Consider all phenomena as like dreams. So this is thinking, reflecting how all phenomena that appear to our minds, to our awareness, whether our sense consciousness or our mental consciousness, to see them all as being dreamlike. And how, in the case, because it's always using dreams as an analogy, right? Because in a dream, things appear as if they're real. Like when we're dreaming, things appear, it seems like they're real, but on waking, we realize they're not real. It was just a projection of our own mind. So similarly, then whatever we perceive, recognizing that things appear to us in a way that's distorted by our own ignorance, right? So things appear to us as if they exist by their own power or from their own side, as what they are, and as the way they appear by the power of the object alone. Whereas that's a distortion, because actually everything that appears to us in a way that's mixed with projections from our own mind. Yeah, no object exists independent of the subject that perceives it. Um, so just like, the colors, actually, why do certain colors, colors of things appear? It's not just solely, due to the property of the things that have colors. It's due to, the ability of our eyes to perceive certain wavelengths of light, and also the light that's falling on those objects. And also, the way our brain processes those things. So it's, the appearance of just like color, for instance. It looks like the color is a property of the object, but actually that experience of color is a dependent arising dependent upon our own bodies and minds, and upon also the object and the other factors. So like that, everything that appears to us, although it appears like things exist from their own side, by their own power, independently, that things have their own, each and every object has its own independent existence. We ourselves have our own independent existence. Actually, that's an illusion. It's totally false. We are continually changing and transforming. We arise and exist in dependence upon parts, in dependence upon causes and conditions, and in dependence upon mental imputation. Like upon the parts of us as a person, all the parts of our bodies, all the parts of our mind. Then we label I who's meditating. And then it appears back to us as if that I exists from its own side, as its own independent reality. But actually that's completely false, because we search for that I anywhere within the parts of the basis of imputation, the parts of the body, the parts of the mind. You can't find any I existing from its own side. And everything's like that. So like that, consider all phenomena as like a dream, appearing to exist from their own side, but actually not existing like that, actually being dependently arising phenomena. Maybe we just meditate on that for a minute first. Mm. And then briefly, the next line, examine the nature of unborn awareness. So that's talking about this mind, the mind itself, which is meditating on emptiness. There's a danger that we grasp at that mind, meditating on the mind, realizing emptiness to have ultimate existence or to exist from its own side. So then also to see that mind itself as being dreamlike, empty of existing by its own power alone, but rather something that exists in dependence upon many parts, all the moments and time, the moments of awareness as they arise in time, and then the different aspects of that mind, the feeling, perception, discrimination. And then it rises in dependence upon causes and conditions. From moment to moment, it's changing, producing successive moments of awareness. And then exists in independence upon imputation, upon all this collection of the parts of the mind. Then we label this awareness, this mind. So even the mind itself that's meditating on emptiness, it itself is also empty. Mm. And thereby the meaning of the next line. The remedy itself is released in its own place. So the remedy itself is this mind, this wisdom mind, realizing emptiness, which is the remedy or the antidote to ignorance. And then it's released in its own place, means it's in as it arises in that moment itself, to recognize it, release from grasping at it as that mind as existing by its own power from its own side. And thereby that mind itself is released from being an object of ignorance. So the remedy itself is released in its own place. And then place the essence of the path on the nature of the basis of all. Yeah, so this idea, the basis of all, is that basically it's talking about the most subtle level of mind that continues from life to life. Just like each morning when we awake from sleep, our sense consciousness, the eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose, tongue, body sense consciousness, which are dormant when we sleep. When we wake from sleep, they become active and we experience, the environment around us. We see things, hear sounds, smell, sense, taste, flavors, and experience hot and cold, rough and smooth with our body consciousness. And then when we go to sleep, they all become dormant again, and just the mental consciousness is active. So just like that, when we die, all of the sense consciousness and also the grosser level of mental consciousness all become dormant, and this most subtle level of mind is the only one that's manifest, active, and this is the one This is the basis of all. This most subtle level of mind that continually goes, in every moment it's present, but kind of in our subconscious, and it goes from life to life. So it's saying, try to access that mind, that most subtle level of mind, and use that subtle level of mind to realize emptiness, and that this is the essence of the path. So place the essence of the path on the nature, means the nature of being dependent arising and thereby being empty from its own side. Of the basis of all means this subtle level of mind. Because it's that subtle level of mind that goes to enlightenment. And then we, once we're enlightened, we continually abide in wisdom and compassion. That's been developed with that subtle level of mind as a basis. So try to imagine accessing that most subtle level of mind and then generating it in the aspect of wisdom, realizing selflessness or realizing emptiness. Mm. And then finally it says, in the period between sessions, be a creator of illusions. So it means like when you arise from this meditation on emptiness, then don't let go of that awareness completely, but rather see that everything appears, although the mind's not explicitly focusing on emptiness. See everything that appears as being illusory. Appearing like they exist, like, all phenomena appear, again, like they exist from their own side, but recognizing that's just an illusion, that they don't exist from their own side. Our nature is empty. And so see all that appears as, because things appear and dependence upon causes and conditions, therefore they're empty of any inherent nature. So we can, especially, generally all the time, but especially when we're practicing like Tonglen, or meditating on compassion or bodhicitta, it's very important to combine this awareness of emptiness with, meditation on conventional phenomena. Like when we're meditating on compassion, loving kindness, bodhicitta, to remember I, the meditator, the objects of my meditation, other sentient beings, the meditation itself, they're all empty of existing from their own side because of being dependent arising. And then also when it says here, in the period between sessions. So that means, all the time when we're not meditating, when we're just going about our daily, ordinary activities in daily life. That's all the period between sessions. Sessions means meditation, formal meditation sessions. So that's also kind of general advice. Whatever awareness we develop while we're meditating during the session, then try to maintain some degree of that in between sessions. Don't totally let go of what you're meditating on, like it's rotten food or something, throw it out. But rather, keep it in the fridge of your mind. Keep enjoying it. Okay, then we continue. Yeah, we'll continue another few minutes. Transforming adverse circumstances into the path, the third of the 7 points. When the environment and its inhabitants overflow with unwholesomeness, so all kinds of bad things are happening. Yeah, so when the environment, outside in the natural, so the environment and its inhabitants, right? So the environment means the inanimate environment around us, and the inhabitants means all the sentient beings within it. So when they overflow with unwholesomeness, so this means externally in the environment, when there's pollution, there's storms, there's earthquakes and fires, there's famine, sickness, all kinds of natural disasters, floods, insects, and so forth. So when there's all kinds of destructive things happening, no? Destructive to us, fires, it's too hot, too cold, and there's pollution, and so forth. So, and then the inhabitants. So when the inhabitants overflow with unwholesomeness, it means there's lots of strife between people, animosity, discord, argumentation, deceit, mistrust of one another, hatred and enmity between people. And also when people, doesn't have to be also, such heavy things, can also just be, people just totally caught up in selfishness or just buying things, totally materialistic, giving all their attention to totally frivolous and meaningless things in life, causing just others to be distracted from what's meaningful. So when the environment and its inhabitants overflow with unwholesomeness, then that's the time for this mind training. Transform adverse circumstances. So these are all adverse circumstances. Things that on the face of it, they're an obstacle to spiritual practice, an obstacle to our own personal development, our own personal practice to reduce and abandon afflictive emotions, disturbing emotions, and cultivate positive emotions. So transform those circumstances into the path. So take those very difficult circumstances as the path to enlightenment. Apply meditation immediately at every opportunity, right? So when we encounter problems, natural disasters or strife and discord among others, difficult people, we ourselves suffer misfortune, or maligned by others, criticized, when we experience illness and so forth, and loss, then take that itself as the basis for practice and apply meditation immediately at every opportunity. So when we suffer, use that as an opportunity to remember the faults of selfishness, remember the drawbacks of creating negative karma, of harmful actions which are cause for our suffering. And remember the suffering of others, generate compassion. When we see others acting in immoral, in harmful ways, instead of being, irritated, annoyed, generate compassion. Recognize they're under the control of afflictive emotions. How sad. I myself must do something to be able to help them. So in that way, we apply the antidotes to attachment, apply antidotes to anger, apply antidotes to ignorance, seeing all things as dreamlike. So apply meditation immediately at every opportunity. The supreme method is accompanied by the four practices. And so the four practices are accumulating merit, purifying negative karma, and then making offerings to malevolent forces and making offerings and supplicating the Dharma protectors. So mainly you can just think accumulating merit and purifying negative karma. So yeah, reflect for a few minutes on this, how to take adverse circumstances into the path. So gradually relax your attention. I'll take a bit longer than 5 minute break. Okay. Are you ready? We're in the home stretch now. The last meditation session. But what is it? It says something here. It says, what does it say? Don't sprint to win the race. No, so even we're in the home stretch, just relax. um, yeah, obviously we won't get to every line in the prayer, but we've gotten the essence is right at the beginning. I mean, the essence really is Tonglen, compassion, and bodhicitta, and then also Tonglen, and then using when we encounter things that are unpleasant or pleasant or neutral, instead of generating attachment or anger or ignorance, generating the antidotes for those. And then, seeing how to use adverse circumstances, difficulties that we encounter in life, instead of letting those overwhelm us or set us back in our practice or become, distractions or obstacles to our practice, to view those in a way such that they become part of our practice, that we cherish those and embrace those difficulties as an opportunity to strengthen our practice. Mm. So here is the fourth point of the seven, the integrated practice of a single lifetime. In brief, the essence of the instruction is to train in the five powers. The five powers themselves are the great vehicles precept on the transference of consciousness. Cultivate these paths of practice. So this idea of a transference of consciousness is, it's very popular kind of genre of practices in Mahayana Buddhism, whereby, because there's a great concern at the time of death that our stream of consciousness, and instead of continuing to a kind of rebirth in which we can continue our practice, that negative karma ripens at the time of death, and our continuum is thrown into an unfortunate rebirth as a human being in a state where we don't have opportunity to practice, or we don't have opportunity to meet the Dharma, or our minds are filled with wrong views, or even as an animal, or a hell being or hungry ghost, states in which there's absolutely, our mind is overwhelmed with ignorance and confusion, or it's just very dull and intelligence like an animal, or is overwhelmed with pain and suffering, as our hell beings and hungry ghosts. And so this idea of a transference of consciousness is like a practice that is especially enacted by ourselves or by others at the time of death in order to direct a person's stream of consciousness, their mind stream, into a good rebirth where they continue practicing Dharma. So what it's saying here is the best in the great vehicle, in the Mahayana, the best precept or practice to transfer our consciousness into a good rebirth is this very mind training itself and the essence of that. So it's saying, in brief, the essence of the instruction is to train in the five powers. So the five powers are, and just to list them, well, I'll just to explain them, make sure you're clear on what it is. So the first is the power of propelling intention, which means thinking again and again, sending out this intention, thinking again and again. From now until my full enlightenment, so from now until I'm enlightened, I shall not be divorced from the two awakening minds, from ultimate and conventional bodhicitta. And I shall not allow my mind training to lose its continuity. So I shall continually engage in this mind training practice. I shall make sure never to be divorced from the two awakening minds until my death. So from now until my death and after my death up until enlightenment, I shall always generate the attitude of conventional bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing emptiness, ultimate bodhicitta. So generating that intention again and again is called the power of propelling intention. And then there's the power of acquaintance, refers to cultivating the two awakening minds at all times, free of distraction. So at all times, however we can, put effort into cultivating attitude of bodhicitta and wisdom realizing emptiness. So just for a couple minutes, just contemplate on those two, those first two of the five powers, the power of propelling intention and the power of acquaintance. And how to integrate those with our daily lives. Mm. And then there's the last three we can look at all together. The power of the positive seed or the white seed means striving during the period between sessions in virtuous activities, such as engaging in the 10 spiritual. Anyway, so like making offerings, making prayers, reciting sutras, practicing generosity. Every time we eat and drink, offering our food and drink to the Buddha Dharma Sangha, helping others, generating just a kind heart. So in between meditation sessions, planting positive seeds, planting, the seeds of virtue, creating virtuous karma in our minds, which will ripen in the future as happiness and support us in developing realizations. So the power of the positive seed. And then the power of eradication is the actual eradication of self-grasping. So again and again, recognizing the faults of ignorance, grasping at inherently existent self, and then the selfish, self-centered mind that arises from that, egotistical attitudes that arise from that, and eradicating, rejecting those, pushing those away again and again. Recognizing they're the root cause of all suffering. So the power of the positive seed, the power of eradication, and eradicating the one to blame for all, and then the power of aspirational prayers. So this is at the conclusion of all virtuous activities, making the following aspiration, making dedication prayers, and especially dedicating that from this moment until I have attained Buddhahood throughout all my lives, may I never be divorced from the two awakening minds, and may I instead train in them. May I know how to take all circumstances that befall me, whether positive or adverse, into this training. Right? So making prayers again and again to be able to train in bodhicitta, and making prayers to be able to take all adverse circumstances into the path. Right? So these are the power of propelling intention, the power of acquaintance, the power of the positive seed, the power of eradication, and the power of aspirational prayers. So it says again and again, in brief, the essence of the instruction is to train in the five powers. The five powers themselves are the great vehicles precept on transference of consciousness. Cultivate these paths of practice. So especially, I can reflect how you can cultivate those five powers, especially the last three. The power of the positive seed, the power of eradication, and the power of aspirational prayers. And then especially we can reflect how by practicing these 5 powers in this life, then that's the best means um, to transform the experience of death, dying and death, into a positive one, right? To use that experience to deepen our compassion, to deepen our own aspiration for enlightenment, and especially to deepen our own understanding of emptiness and dependent arising, and thereby to ensure that in the future, in our immediate next rebirth, we take rebirth in a state such that we can continue practicing in a state where we have supportive family and parents and family, that we meet the Buddhist teachings again, that we meet spiritual friends and Dharma teachers, and that we ourselves have interest and have the propensity, the disposition to practice compassion or renunciation, to meditate on emptiness again. So especially take to heart these lines that the 5 powers themselves are the great vehicles precept on the transference of consciousness. So it's transferring our own consciousness from this life into the next life again and again, so that we can come closer and closer to enlightenment and thereby be of greater and greater benefit to our kind mother sentient beings. Mm. And let's read this next set of lines, meditate on it briefly, and then we'll dedicate. So the measure of having trained the mind. Integrate all the teachings into one thought, so that one thought is basically compassion, the altruistic attitude. The opposite says the intent of all the teachings converges on a single point. All the teachings were taught in order to overcome and destroy the self-centered attitude and the ignorance of grasping. Right? So integrate all the teachings into the one thought means basically wisdom and compassion, right? Or the 2 bodhicittas. Primary importance should be given to the 2 witnesses. Remember, the witness of others and the witness of ourself, our self knowing what we do. And of those, the primary is oneself. Be a witness to yourself of whether you're using your time well, using your life well, directing your attitude and your mind in a wholesome way or not. Constantly cultivate only a joyful mind. And then the measure of a trained mind is that, so this is the actual measure of a trained mind, is that it is turned away. So it's not interested in chasing after pleasures and samsara, chasing after the 8 worldly concerns. There are the 5 great marks of a trained mind. Being a great being, a great in actions, so engaging in virtuous actions, as a great ascetic, able to endure hardships, as a great holder of discipline, meaning keeping pure morality, and as a great yogi, meaning engaging in practice all the time. There are the 5 great marks of a trained mind. The trained mind retains control even when distracted. So we can reflect on those lines just for a couple minutes. In whatever way you like. Okay, we can relax your attention there and kind of conclude for yourself. Think over all the things you've meditated on in this kind of practice session from 2 o'clock until now, beginning with the motivation, your own motivation, and then the benefits of compassion. Compassion being like the seed, the water, and the harvest of the crop. And then compassion and bodhicitta being like a diamond, like the sun, like a medicinal tree. And then meditating on the method of exchanging, equalizing and exchanging self and others. On equanimity, the faults of self-cherishing, the benefits of cherishing others, actually exchanging self and others, and then tonglen, and mounting tonglen or giving and taking on the breath. And trying to integrate that with all our practice, and then meditating on emptiness, seeing all things as like an illusion, even the mind, meditating on emptiness itself. And then especially, remembering in daily life when we encounter the three types of objects, to not give rise to the three types of poisons and instead give rise to the three virtues that are the antidotes to anger, attachment, and ignorance, and thereby transform all adverse circumstances. When the environment and its inhabitants overflow with unwholesomeness, to transform that into the path. And then the integrated practice of the five powers. And then here, the measure of having trained the mind. That we can practice, we're so habituated to this mind training that we practice even when distracted. So conclude for yourself. Yeah, kind of draw some conclusion. What would you like to take away from this for the future? And especially put emphasis on trying to integrate into your life more and more. Mm, Okay, so now Bei will lead us in some concluding dedication prayers. So maybe before you start, Bei, think of all the merit we've generated during this session. I feel like it's been really excellent meditation session. We all have been making very sincere effort. For those here in the room in Ocean of Compassion Center and those online. So we rejoice in this session and in all the sessions, the teaching sessions we've had, all the work you've put in at home, reading and meditating, contemplating. And then we can rejoice in all the merit accumulated by other ordinary beings like ourselves throughout the world, engaging in so many, benevolent activities, working for the welfare of all, teachers and doctors and nurses and, others, social workers, others working in countless ways to benefit beings, and rejoice in all of that, and rejoice in all the merit of all the enlightened beings, Buddhas, those on the path, Bodhisattvas, and especially our own teachers, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and others. So then imagine all this oceans of positive energy, oceans of merit gathered together. And we dedicate Yeah, especially for the flourishing of the Buddha Dharma, that the Buddha Dharma flourish in the world, especially all those, genuinely putting effort into practicing the path, that they quickly generate realizations on the path, become free from samsara, achieve full enlightenment. And especially those upholding the Dharma in the world, and their lives be long and stable. And for the organization we're part of, the Foundation for the Preservation of Mahayana Tradition, FPMT, may it have supportive conditions and success. It's all its activities, and especially the center hosting this module of discovering Buddhism, um, and Ocean of Compassion Buddhist Center, and also Land of Medicine Buddha Center. May the centers be free from every obstacle and have every supportive condition for the activities, especially Ocean of Compassion. May it be able to find a new premises quickly that is even better than the current one, and can enable the center to expand its virtuous activities. And Land of Medicine Buddha may be able to find a new staff, more staff. They're understaffed, I heard yesterday. Volunteers and paid staff. And then bring to mind any prayers, personal prayers you'd like to make for yourself, your family, and friends, for other causes. So may all those your own virtuous prayers be accomplished in accordance here with your wishes. And then, yeah, before we read these dedication prayers, especially may all the, all those, all the wars in Ukraine, in Gaza, and other places in Africa, may they immediately be resolved through peaceful dialogue. And especially may Ukraine and Gaza, all the peoples whose lives and homes have been destroyed, businesses, may they quickly, in schools and hospitals, may they quickly be rebuilt. All those who recently died in those conflicts and in general in other places in the world, may they take a precious human rebirth or rebirth in a pure land with the conditions to progress on whichever spiritual path is most suited to their disposition. All those who've taken rebirth in the lower realms in general, in the hells, hungry ghost, and animal realms, may their karma to exist in those states quickly be exhausted, and may they also take a precious human rebirth, a rebirth in a pure land. May all those whose minds are overcome with anger and hatred and intent on harming others, may their minds utterly be transformed into loving kindness and compassion, and their altruistic concern to protect and care for others. Yeah. And then let's dedicate with these prayers.
Okay, due to this virtue, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all transmigratory beings without exception to that state. May the precious Supreme Bodhisattva not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline but increase more and more. May the precious view of emptiness not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline but increase more and more. By these merits, may transgressor beings attain that state of all seeing, subdue the enemy of false, and be freed from the ocean of samsara, disturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadras as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by all the gone beyond victors of the three times in order to have good conduct. May the blind see forms, may the deaf hear sounds, may the naked find clothing, the hungry find food, may the thirsty find water and delicious drinks, may the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy, may the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments, and may every disease in the world never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be free. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting one another. May no living creature ever suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, ever be distressed.
If from those who encounter me
a faithful or angry thought arises, may that eternally become the source for fulfilling all their wishes. May all those who say bad things to me or cause me any other harm, and those who mock and insult me, have the fortune to fully awaken. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world, until everyone is healed. May a rain of food and drink descend to clear away the pain of thirst and hunger, and during the eon of famine, may I myself change into food and drink. May I become an inexhaustible treasure for those who are poor and destitute. May I turn into all things they could need, and may these be placed close beside them. May I be a protector for those without one, a guide for all travelers on the way. May I be a bridge, a boat, and a ship for all who wish to cross the ocean. May I be an island for those who seek one, and a lamp for those desiring light. May I be a bed for all who wish to rest, and a servant for all who want a servant. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach unto the ends of space. Just like the faith of the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. For as long as space remains, and for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the mysteries of the world. The wish granting, wish fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, the incantably kind Supreme Tenzin Gyatso, may you have a long life and your all wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Savior of the land of snow, teachings and transmigatory beings who sensibly clarify the path that unify emptiness and compassion, to the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled.
And then also for the unmistaken reincarnation of Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the former spiritual director of FPMT for many, many years. May Rinpoche's reincarnation be identified at the appropriate time, and then may he show the aspect of, may he be very healthy, have a long and stable life, and be surrounded by loving, kind, and ethical, wise people. And may Rinpoche once again show the aspect of impeccably studying and practicing the Dharma and being a perfect teacher and guide for countless others. And may his life be of even more benefit to the Buddha Dharma and to sentient beings than ever before. Okay, so thank you all so much for joining the course and for joining the meditation today. And yeah, if you want to, you can join the module on emptiness, which starts on Tuesday. It's coming Tuesday.
Yeah.
At the Land of Medicine Buddha.
Yes, Land of Medicine Buddha is hosting. So if you haven't registered, please register at the Land of Medicine Buddha website. And thank you so much, Geshe-la.
Yeah, thank you, Bae, also for facilitating the entire course. It's a lot of work. Yeah. And Asha for helping with all the technical support. Yeah, thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Bae. Thank you, Asha.